Good morning, everyone. I'm Ari Pincus, a research scientist for the American Communities Project, and it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce our panel of community leaders. To my immediate right, I have Roberto Betharil, project manager of Neighborhood and Development Services for the City of Garden City in Finney County, Kansas. Next to him is Daniel Bush, mayor of Salem in Fulton County, Arkansas. Next to him is Ellen Huber, business development and communications director for the City of Mandan in Morton County, North Dakota. And then we have Erica Nicholson, director of Gove County Economic Development in Gove County, Kansas. And then Cedric Williams, mayor of Forest City in St. Francis County, Arkansas.
Thank you.
I want to start off by asking all of you to describe your community for us. Like, kind of paint the picture of what it's like to live and work where you are. Go ahead, Roberto.
My community is about roughly 30,000 people. We live about, to get anywhere from Garden City to metropolitan area, it's at least 5-hour drive, 6-hour drive. Finney County is kind of in the southwest corner of the state of Kansas. It's very dry, it's very windy.
Okay, Daniel?
Daniel Bush, mayor of Salem. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and tell our story. So Salem, Fulton County, is located in north central Arkansas along the Missouri border. County population of roughly 12,000 people. Salem is the county seat with a population of 1,600. Within our county, we have the state's largest spring at Mammoth Spring. I think it's 9 million gallons of water an hour. It is the 7th largest in the United States, primarily agricultural, and then trying to capture the retail dollar as far as tourism that's transversing through our communities.
Ellen?
Mandan, North Dakota is located along the Missouri River, just across the river from the capital city of Bismarck. So it's in central North Dakota along Interstate 94. And in North Dakota, our context would be either being a small city or a large small town, but most importantly, we think of ourselves as a community. And I think that's one of our strengths.
Erica?
I think when we were in discussion last night, we were really honored that there is this much interest. So thank you for taking interest in our communities. We're very proud of them. I was born and raised in Quinter, Kansas, returned back home to Gove County several years later. What it's like to live and work in Gove County, I can be to work in less than a minute. There are about 2,600 people in Gove County, and my town has 961 people. Very proud community, very community-oriented. You know, we talk about helping raise each other's kids. I probably know everyone in my county. But thanks again for having us.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Cedric Williams, mayor of Forest City, Arkansas. Again, thank you, Ari, and thank you, Dante, and thank you to the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation for, again, taking the interest in our communities. And thank you to each of you for coming today. Forest City, Arkansas, the city is about 15,000. Our county is a little bit over 28,000. We're an agricultural-driven community. Also, we do have industry and we have natural recreation in our area. One of our greatest assets is the people. We have a great social capital as far as people in our area that really care about their community and care about each other. A great place to live, and again, one of the great assets is we can be at work across town within 5 minutes of there.
Thank you so much, all of you. Now I want to just ask you a little bit about the economic pressures that you're currently facing in your community. Go ahead, Roberto.
In Finney County, the economic pressure that we have is everything is based agricultural. So we have pretty much the main industry is Tyson plant that we have. That's the major employer. And everything revolves around that. So we have a lot of cattle feed yards. We have all or most of the agriculture that is for feeding all the cattle, all the piping and wells drilling and all that. It's to feed the cattle again and the food for all that. Now it's growing also a lot because we have what they call the renewable energies, those windmills. We have a hub where they bring in by rail and then distribute around the different counties in that area. So it's really kind of we're striving to move forward with it. Recently, we have a fire in the Tyson plant, which is the major employer, and one of the things that Tyson, we're very grateful for them that they continue to pay salaries even though the plant is shut down for reconstruction. So it's kind of scary sometimes because if you have only very some of those resources they go away, then what do you do? So it's very important for us to have that work into partnership with the different the largest employers that we have.
Daniel?
So in our neck of the woods, it's primarily agricultural, beef, with pork, and now recently poultry is kind of chicken and turkey farms are starting to be dotted along the landscape. A gentleman earlier brought up a question on, I guess, regionalization as far as trying to promote or recruit our area. So that's something that our area has realized that it's not a me thing, it's typically now a we thing, where our Tri-County area tries to put down those barriers and realize that in order to attract industry, we've got to come together and pull our resources together. And then if big industry comes, to have a sustainable workforce to help produce what that manufacturers need and get done.
Yeah, thank you. Ellen?
Well, I should share that our city of Mandan is about 22,000 in population and part of a county that's nearing 32,000 and then a metropolitan area of about 130,000. But the whole state of North Dakota is less than 800,000 people. And so agriculture remains the bedrock of our state, but we're aggressively working to diversify the state's economy, and that's true on the local level as well. And so we are fortunate to have IT, large business in the community. We've got a meat processor, refinery. Healthcare is hugely important to our region. And the number one thing I would say that's restraining the growth of our existing businesses and the startup of new businesses is our ability to continue to attract enough workforce to keep pace with the growth of our area.
And how about you, Erica? How are you seeing things
We're
go?
primarily agricultural as well. We are diverse. We have a lot of industry, a lot of production in Gove County, even as small as we are. I would agree that workforce is a challenge. We have the second lowest unemployment rate in the state. Our county does. We have businesses expanding, but we don't have workers, and that prohibits those expansions. That's hard for us. Our healthcare picture is very important to the success of our community. I hope that somebody asks me a question later about our healthcare and the number of doctors we have out in our area, the number of providers. So.
You can go ahead.
We have an unusual situation in Gove County where we have 5 physicians and 2 mid-levels. We're a regional facility whose physicians practice OB in a 120-mile radius. So if you think about that, do you really want to drive 60 miles to have your baby? So that is very key to the success and the growth of our community. And recruiting nurses and respiratory therapists and lab people, it's really a struggle.
My challenges as far as economic development, some of the pressures are a little bit different. At where I'm at in St. Francis County and Forest City, we're about 45 miles southwest of Memphis and about 90 miles east of Little Rock. We're in what is called the Delta. So one of our biggest challenges is job creation in our particular areas. And the jobs that we do have, again, agriculture-based, we do have industry in our particular area, but also the wages of those jobs and making sure they have livable wages in our particular area. The workforce, we're working and partnering with our community college and different high schools and education system to make sure that our students, our young people are receiving the skill-based training that where they can be successful. But one of the things that we'll talk about probably a little bit later is we have that skill-based training, but the jobs in our particular area where they can put that to use is not there currently. But we're really working on the regional aspect, the partnership aspect, and economic development opportunities for recruiting people to our particular area.
Thank you so much. To build on that, I wonder if you could talk about the partnerships that you've had that have been successful and what has made them successful. Partnerships with businesses, with nonprofits, with schools. Want to go ahead,
Sure.
Roberto?
Again, circling back to the agriculture, there's people had to live somewhere, so you had to, build houses. Well, now people have to shop somewhere. Well, you had to bring in retail. And Phoenix County has been really good because we work with all these different companies, big box. We have actually 2 Walmarts in the community. We have a Sam's Club. We have Target. We have all these big shops. We even have like TJ Maxx, Ross type of shops. So a lot of the neighboring communities come to Garden City because of we have all these different stores that instead of driving to Wichita or Denver or Kansas City, where Garden City kind of is in the middle, so people draw to it. So it's kind of like a snowball effect in this area where we are considered to be rural, but yet we're still kind of have some urban feel to it because we have now all these shops, and on the weekends we have a lot of people coming in that support those shops. A lot of economic studies are done by all these different companies. Of course, they need to make a profit. And we partner with them by providing incentives to the different developers. We have several tax incentive rebates. We have what they call the RHID, Rural Housing Incentive for Development, that helps develop the rural or the houses. We pass through different taxing incentives for different types of developments. So as we continue to grow, we have seen that works for us in bringing all these other people, giving them incentives, and yet we don't have to go or travel too far away to get what the community actually wants. In addition to that, I understand there's a partnership with the community college that they're working with. We have a couple satellite offices or campuses for a couple of the universities in Kansas. So we kind of have developed that working partnership with some of these entities so that we can provide all these services to the community, and it continues to grow. It just continues to grow, I guess.
Yeah, the world grows here, as they say.
Yes.
How about you, Daniel? What kind of partnerships do you have? Any with schools?
Yes, ma'am. Some of the partnerships that we have will be with Ozarka College. It's a community college, kind of like what Roberto mentioned. So it's kind of the same concept. Ozarka College, Arkansas State University, the high school students have an opportunity their senior year to go off campus for half a day for their school day to go and learn a skill. If they choose not to go the professional path of a college degree, they're going to learn a working trade, plumber, electrician, HVAC. In our area, welding, is a national or a big trend right now. So these different colleges are offering those courses so that they can go get certified and get their credentials in place. So that way they have a plan when they so choose or to graduate. They have a path, career path. Another partnership recently is still in its infancy stage is with the University of Arkansas, the Create Bridges initiative. It is a study a lot like this one, except it's going to be more geared towards retail, tourism. So they are polling or surveying the retail business owners in our area and once they compile that data, come back to the community leaders and give us a plan and give the business owners a plan on maybe how to stop that retail leakage.
Yeah. How about you, Ellen? How are you seeing things where you are?
Partnerships have been key to moving Mandan forward. One of the things that our community has experienced, part of our heritage is being not only a former Native American village, but also a railroad community. And so as part of that, we had an underground diesel fuel spill discovered in the heart of our downtown and Main Street area in 1985. And Burlington Northern Railroad worked on cleaning that up for a number of years, but in about the early 2000s, they thought that it was good enough, and that the product that was remaining beneath our downtown was due to other potentially responsible parties. And so the city of Mandan and the state of North Dakota, our health department, disagreed at that time and did file suit and reached a settlement in 2004 that resulted in about $30 million in actual monetary contribution as well as property, and that was used to put a more effective remediation system in place. And as they went out to look at remediation providers, there were many that would have said, tear down the buildings, dig up all the soil, get all this contaminated soil out. But there was another approach that is involved putting about 200 miles of pipe and 300 wells in a 6-block area in our downtown area. And so we were able to maintain the vast majority of the buildings in this area by putting wells in basements for the extraction of both the liquid and the vapors. And so rebuilding and revitalizing this downtown area was a bigger challenge than most rural communities were facing. And so it's taken incredible public-private partnerships, leading with public investment, and then assertively going out and seeking developers. And one of the strategies was to increase the density in our downtown and have more downtown living opportunities, both for seniors as well as for people of all ages. And so we've been very successful in partnering with private developers by offering extended property tax exemption and working with programs like the Low Income Housing Federal Tax Credit Program we now have 5 different high-density living facilities that have either been infill projects or reuse of existing buildings. So those public-private partnerships have been very critical.
How about you, Erica? What partnerships can you tell us about?
One of the most important partnerships we have is like with the Kansas Department of Commerce, the USDA, the Farm Bureau, the 4-H. I am seeing them actively reinvest in rural communities. They're genuinely realizing the importance of this loss and transfer of wealth that we're having. Some of the private nonprofit support that we have, Northwest Kansas has an organization called the Dane G. Hansen Foundation. It covers the northwest quadrant of the state of Kansas, and they reinvest in these counties to the tune of millions and millions and millions of dollars every year. They have opened the Northwest Kansas Center for Economic Innovation, and they pay for that. But they're teaching us at the county level how to reinvest in ourselves. You know, we're bootstrap mentality. We understand that we can't sit there and say, help me, help me, help me, if we don't invest in ourselves. And so when sometimes you sit with economic development people and they'll say, oh, well, you can't get that USDA grant, or you can't get that Department of Commerce grant. Well, I promise you that you can. You know, if you show them that you're reinvesting in yourself and what the return on investment will be, they'll absolutely invest in you and take a chance on your community. They've been very successful. We have a partnership with the University of Kansas where they send med students and preceptors out on their rural rotations. And I'll be honest with you, that's how we lure in all these doctors. You know, if you want to live in rural Kansas and you do a rotation in Gove County, Dr. Mackin will take you hunting or fishing. It's typically the spouse or the non-physician partner that we have trouble convincing to live out there. There's a new program called Rural and Remote. A gentleman out of Dallas, I think, has started that. So we're saying, you know, if your spouse wants to work 40 hours a week and make a decent living, look for the jobs through this Rural and Remote website. We have a great partnership with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. Housing is very, very hard to come by. not affordable. So, without those federal and state partnerships, it would be very, very difficult in Gove County.
Cedric?
Yeah, great. Yeah, since becoming mayor, forming partnerships has been one of my keys. One of my slogan in Forest City is one Forest City, one community, one vision, and that's us working together and utilizing our resources. Some of our recent partnerships started with our county judge, and a small partnership where we partnered together on early warning systems as far as our county. Within our city limits of Forest City, we have tornado sirens, but outside the county, there was nothing. So we partnered together for new technology and code red to where when there's severe storms or threatening weather in our area, that they receive text messages warning them of those particular items. So that's small partnerships, again, with the county. It all starts with the leadership. Big partnership is with our education systems within our community. Have great partnerships with the new superintendent of our local high school, Forest City High School, and also the president, Dr. Kathy Klein, of our East Arkansas Community College. Forming these partnerships, we had a recognized program to where the governor of Arkansas came down and looked at a program where we talk about welding and talk about CDL drivers, how we were educating and our students and having them what we call work-ready certified. They become a work-ready certified community. And through that partnership, we were recognized, we partnered with our local elected officials, Representative Reginald Murdoch of our area, to where we received a workforce grant to where we were able to employ over 65 youth in a 3-county area with the different mayors in these particular areas, to where we could put these kids to work for 2 months in our local businesses free of charge, to where they gained workforce readiness training, but also we were able to document that we did have a workforce in our area. It's these small partnerships like that that really shows when I talk about the vision of how we can grow our community in our area by working together with the resources that we have. So public-private partnerships are truly, truly a key, and we have several more that we're really working on, and a lot of them are geared, again, towards the young people in our community. As one thing is when you're working with rural America, when you're working with challenges in your community, if you concentrate programs, concentrate different activities involving the youth in your community, you bring together all different demographics in your area. So that's one of the things we're really trying to concentrate on in our area.
Cedric, I wonder if you could tell folks here about your Unity initiative and how it came about and what progress you're seeing in the past year since you've taken office.
Well, and one of the biggest things, and we talk about it, in my community, I've lived there 6 years. I did not grow up in my community. One of the things that really drove me to run for mayor in our office, I saw the resources, I saw the great people, I saw people working hard to different things in the community, but there was a divide among the leadership where the leadership was not working together. And so that what drove me to run for mayor, and I ran on the platform of unifying our community, and we're blessed to be elected mayor of our community. One of the biggest things, again, taking office, I choose a word of the year, and all my department heads had a word of the year, and that word of the year for me was unity. And I felt from a leadership standpoint, it has to start at the top of unifying your community. Everywhere that I was able to speak at, or I'm able to speak, I talk about unity and working together. Some of the different things we put in place, I had what is called Unity Breakfast. Each quarter. The first one was with our business leaders in our local community, to where we shared the vision of us, again, the regionalism of working together, utilizing our resources for the betterment of our entire community. Our next Unity Breakfast was for faith-based leaders and realtors together, to where you think about that. Well, and the reasoning behind that, one of the challenges that we have in our area is home ownership and how people are able to get access, first-time home buyers, finding what you need to do from a credit-based standpoint to own your home. Well, in our area, rural America, usually what you find is a lot of your leaders are your faith-based leaders. So if you can use your faith-based leaders from a communication standpoint to their different congregations about, in this instance, home ownership, then you're really reaching out to the majority of your community. And so with those unity breakfasts, it's really taken home. Again, I talk about one Forest City, one community, one vision. Our school district has adopted a slogan of one community, one school. Our East Arkansas Community College, they have bracelets that say we're stronger together. It's amazing once your leadership gets on the same page, especially in your rural communities, about growing your entire community, how it really, really takes hold. So I'm proud of the progress that we've made so far.
That's great to hear. Roberta, I know that Finney County is a very diverse county. People from all over the world have been coming there for about 100 years or so. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how the community comes together. What makes Finney work so well?
Well, everybody respects each other. That's one of the biggest keys in it. And we respect what their beliefs are. We embrace. We try to include everyone. Something as simple as translating the brochures that we have and make them accessible, and finding people who actually can, help us translate. We have people start coming from Vietnam when there were some refugees, so the community embraced that. And these Vietnamese people, they embrace the community as well, and then now have a lot of Hispanic. That's really growing a lot as well. Again, people embrace the Hispanic community, and we also receive refugees from Burma, refugees from Somalia. So there's a lot of, we're beginning to identify, these people aren't so bad. We all can work all together. We're still people. We're still, have interests. We still have to find a place to live. We still need to eat. We still, have necessities. So they're not that different than we are. So by doing that, we all unify. We have different events. We celebrate their different cultures. In fact, our logo was recently, not recently, maybe about 5 years ago, changed to trying to embrace all that. We did have, unfortunately, attacks on, I can't remember if it's 2015, where a mosque was going to be bombed.
2016.
Yes. And so the community got together and we embraced that. If you attack this, type, you're attacking our community. So people realizing that, they feel more welcome, and in giving them back, for example, me being Hispanic, if I feel welcome, of course, my nature is going to be, you're welcome too, and I try to embrace your culture, and so it just works hand in hand, and we edify and elevate each other.
That's great. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about infrastructure. Daniel, there's a major project going on in your neck of the woods. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, it is broadband internet. It is going to change the way how we can do business in northern Arkansas, predominantly in our rural areas. So it is an initiative that North Arkansas Electric Cooperative has taken upon themselves, with rural electrification. So that mindset is to introduce broadband into rural areas. They have the infrastructure in place to wire that to the homes in rural America. So I believe it's a 4-year plan to hopefully have broadband internet available to all of their customers that are on their electric grid. And with that, hopefully that will spawn jobs. The mindset in my area, obviously with the older business people. They don't typically, they don't think online sales. So hopefully with having a high-speed internet access, this is going to recruit, the ones that do go off to college. They can come back and work in Salem, Arkansas and make six figures a year, So it's anxious to see. It's in, I believe, its second year of getting up and running, so to speak. It is a large region that they've got to cover, but they've got the contractors in place to get that up and going. So I look forward to seeing what opportunity that this will create for our area.
Great. Ellen, I know infrastructure is a major issue where you are too. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing there.
Sure. Well, if you see less productivity in business development in Mandan, it's because I now have Netflix in my home. So I'm a lifer in Mandan, other than 4 years at North Dakota State University in Fargo, and I'm only now less than 2 miles from city limits. So the city has definitely grown to reach what was my parents' farm and ranch growing up. But interestingly enough, we were sort of in no man's land when it came to high-speed internet, and so fortunately we're seeing some great partnerships through our rural electric cooperatives as well, and so really that's one of North Dakota's advantages, I would say. I mean, so I was kind of unique in saying that I didn't have Netflix until this last year. That's really been a strength of North Dakota to have pretty good IT infrastructure, and we recognize that with that workforce attraction challenge that we have, that if someone can't get Netflix in their home, then that's probably not going to be the quality of life that they're going to choose for their business or career. And so that's an important advantage that we're promoting now. But then the other challenges that we face are really just in maintaining existing streets and roadways and maintaining that aging infrastructure. So we're putting a lot of money into a new intake for our water treatment facility, needing to put money into stormwater management, and then we're also hopeful in the future for another interstate exit too.
How about you, Erica? Could you talk about infrastructure a little bit?
Sure. I'm going to jump on the internet bandwagon here. It's critical in Gove County. We're very lucky. We have excellent broadband internet service. Dante talked about the Love Small Town America, the young lady that runs that. Without direct, fast internet access, she couldn't run that. You guys have all probably seen some Facebook Lives or some business pop-ups, and we have a lot of those. We have clothing boutiques, we have folks that sell jewelry and purses and clothes online, and that kind of fuels our commerce cycle as well. One thing that's really hard for us, and it's probably hard for Roberto too, we're concerned about our water, and I consider water part of the infrastructure. And we have a lot of farmers irrigating, even though we've had a really wet year, uncharacteristically wet in western Kansas. We're concerned about water. What happens when our farmers can't irrigate? What happens when your agricultural water rights and your municipal water rights, they're fighting for those same gallons of water? How are those discussions going to look in the next 8, 10, 12 years? They're going to be difficult discussions. You can't have the city, the hospital, the schools without water, but your farmers can't irrigate their corn or their wheat or their feed. So those will be discussions we'll have to tread lightly, but we're going to have those talks. If we have a decade of the precipitation that we had last year, then maybe our water tables will rise. But even with all that precipitation, we're just holding at the low level that we're already at. And it's frightening for me, the water issue.
How about you, Cedric? What does the infrastructure picture look like where you are?
I could say ditto. Everything everybody said here is amazing. We come from different parts of rural America, but we experience a lot of the same issues when you talk about infrastructure. In our particular area, I face concerns about our aging infrastructure. When you talk about the water, you talk about the streets and different items such as that. But where we're located, one of our greatest assets is our location. We're located right on what is affectionately known as America's Highway, I-40. that travels, and we're 241A. If you're ever that direction, if they take the exit, buy a little gas, and spend the night there, we need the tax revenue. But but one of the things there that we have the small town feel as far as our downtown, but we also have a bypass in that particular area that is ripe, again, I said, for industrial development in that particular area. But one of the things that challenges is we don't have the infrastructure, the water and sewer at that particular area to make it marketable now to a lot of the large businesses. So the challenge is, from an infrastructure standpoint, balancing the part of taking care of your aging infrastructure needs, but also investing in the future to where I mentioned earlier, one of our economic problems is job creation. But we need to invest in the infrastructure to bring those particular jobs to our particular area. So those are some of the partnerships and some of the grants, some of the different things that we're searching for additional resources for community development to where we can invest in our community, but also find that balance to where we're taking care of that aging infrastructure as it does become problems there.
I want to talk a little bit about news and information and what you find where people are going to get their news and information online, offline. If you could, maybe Cedric, you want to start?
In my community, it is amazing that we still read the newspaper. We have a local talk show, morning talk show, that people get up early and listen to that talk show. But people still receive a majority of their news from these particular outlets in our particular area. But again, I mentioned the young people. One of the things now with our young people, they get their information off Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, or whatever the latest fad is on those particular areas. So it has to be a balance in my community, and we still have a great relationship with the media outlets between radio and a newspaper. But we had a storm that happened in our community of June of 2018 where all the electricity was out. Guess what? We didn't have a newspaper. We didn't have the radio, but we had Facebook. And so the news was being reported by Facebook and individuals. And one of my challenges and one of my initiatives in future partnership is partnering with our young people, our local schools, in helping tell the good things about our community over social media. In other words, controlling our message. When you talk about the radio and talk about newspaper, they do a great job of covering the events inside of Forest City and St. Francis County. But we have to get our news and our assets and the different things outside of Forest City and St. Francis County about job creation. We just had 14 new jobs created in our area from Mid-South Health Systems moving to our particular area. The great natural resources from a Stewart Springs Park to our new aquatic center. We need to tell the great things about Forest City, Arkansas outside of Forest City, Arkansas. That's where partnerships with Facebook, streaming our city council meetings, investing in technology to where we can tell our story and people don't have to come to Forest City just to hear our message. And that's some of the things we're utilizing our young people to help do that in a better way.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Erica? Are people streaming where you are?
They are, and you did a great job. Your exposure and what you guys use in your community is very similar to what we use. I will tell you that a lot of our world's problems get solved at the coffee shop in the morning too. They kind of feed each other information and make decisions, and I know what I'm doing every day because they tell me. They're engaged, they're invested in the community, and they sit and they chat about the football game on Friday night or like. We are at a different level. When we ate dinner with you last night, you guys talked about what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now and how it's kind of overshadowing everything. It's not overshadowing much in Gove County. We have to get the corn in. We have to get the cattle fed. Gordon's got a cattle sale in 2 weeks he's got to get ready for. So we aren't consumed with the discussion of what's happening down the street. We have homecoming this weekend. We got to beat the the Bulldogs or whoever this weekend. But we do, if I want to know what the grocery store's hours are, or if the pit stop's open, or if the restaurant's open, I can get on their Facebook page and I can see what their special is for the day. I would tell you that if our cell towers went down, that'd probably cripple. Everybody would be like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I don't know how to, is Interstate open because of the snow?" And but we're very similar to the things that Cedric described.
Yeah. How about you, Ellen? How similar are you or different?
Probably the uniqueness that we face is we have strong metropolitan media in terms of Bismarck Tribune and local television stations, but our Mandan News, which was owned by more of a conglomerate, it would cease to exist if it wasn't that the city and county are required to publish minutes and public notices and such in it. But they have ceased to have an office in Mandan or have an editor devoted to news coverage. And so what we found as a community is that we needed to go more direct, as Cedric was saying. And so we have created what we call the Mandan Messenger newsletter that goes out with our community water bill mailings and is available online. And then definitely have embraced social media as well as push messages that people can sign up for through our website. But so Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram have become hugely important tools. We even use an electronic message center on our main street to help alert people to information. And then definitely from a proactive standpoint of changing that tone of conversation to being more of a can-do community and talking about all of the possibilities. We, in 2009, had a community strategic planning process, and from that came 4 committees, 2 of which are still active. One is called the Leadership Pride and Image Committee, and so that group has kind of become ambassadors, and so we have what we call a Made in Mandan Facebook page, because we talk about opportunity, fun, achievement, and community all being made in Mandan. And that particular Facebook page has about 7,000 followers, which I think is pretty good in a community of 22,000. And it's really all about what's positive that's going on in our community and pushing that information out and giving people reasons to move back to North Dakota and back to Mandan to take those job opportunities.
Great. How about you, Daniel? What's the role of social media versus traditional media?
Kind of like what you said, the coffee shop. No, honestly, it's probably a mixture of both. More so social media due to the fact of living in northern Arkansas on a county that borders Missouri. So our televised local news is coming from about 2.5 hours away. And with our unique position being along the Missouri border, our local stations are Missouri news broadcasts. So what we're seeing as far as state news is typically Missouri news. So that's a disadvantage of living, being a border state. But as far as the national level goes, it would be typically social media, an outlet on that. That's about it.
How about you, Roberto?
Well, I always believe that we are now in the age of communication. So really, rural America is really well connected because we're in the age of communication. Like Erica said, if the cell towers go down, oh my God, I don't have Facebook anymore. So you can sell your washer, dryer on Facebook. You can sell a car. You can sell anything you want on Facebook. Yes, we do have a local newspaper as well, but a lot of times they get their national news from the AP News. So again, I think that we are very well connected. All the different means of communications, infrastructure is advancing forward with cell towers, small transmitters, all those kind of 5G is coming to town as well. So I think that it's just a mixture of, it all depends what you want, where your interests are, and you can find them either in your local newspaper or you can find them in your local news channel or Facebook as well.
I want to switch gears a little bit and just ask you all, what do you find about the food quality and access where you live? I know you're all a lot of agriculture-based places, but what do you think, Roberto, in terms of access to food?
So agricultural base, doesn't necessarily mean that you can eat it. We have a lot of cornfields, but the corn that they grow is really not sweet. It's for cows. So although you have a lot of agriculture, it's not the final product. It's the raw material that goes out somewhere else to get processed. Garden City is like I said, is kind of in the middle of everything, but yet it's in the middle of nowhere because it's too far away to get stuff. We get about 10% increase in to bring stuff in. So it's actually quite expensive, more expensive than you would think. I also lived in Miami, and food in Miami is more accessible than food here. Then again, all the different retailers and food chains, they cater according to the demographics of the population. So I have noticed that now that we have a lot of people from different countries, we have a lot of foods from different countries. So it's good. We have a great variety of stuff, but yeah, it's still a challenge to bring it in, and it's still a bit more expensive to.
Do you find that's true too, Daniel?
I
Where you
do.
are?
Kind of follow up with what you said, the raw product. A lot of our main beef sales go to your neck of the woods out into Kansas to the feedlots for sale. With that said, the majority of the people will buy their own, and fatten up a steer or whatever. So they'll have their own raised beef, pork, not so much on the poultry side of it, but beef and pork is predominantly readily accessible within our community. Now, keep in mind, Fulton County, a population of roughly 12,000 people, with Salem being the county seat, we have one grocery store. And, so with that said, trying to service the amount of people that we have, your necessities, your commodities that you try to go purchase, are not readily accessible. So that's where the retail leakage happens, where, residents in Salem traveling east and west the different communities to the big box stores to buy their, canned goods or their toilet paper or whatever. So Salem's doing, trying to do a better job of that. But as far as, freshness, food quality, it's there. Farmers markets, especially spring, summer, is great. Recently we've had an increase of Amish coming in and living in some of the surrounding smaller communities. So that really helps on the produce and the different varieties of what they can bring and to offer to the table. So it's slowly progressing as far as more accessible, but now everything's going good.
Yeah. How about you, Ellen? What do you find about the food quality in Mandan?
I would call it good, but not excellent. So there's certainly room for improvement. We know that a grocery operator needs to be within at least 200 miles from us to even consider locating in our area. So for the longest time, we didn't have a Walmart even in Mandan. We got one in 2013, but at the same time, we saw some consolidation in our grocery industry in our state, and so lost a store due to a sale that occurred there and their desire to just have one big facility in Bismarck. So we were seeing a lot of leakage from our community in terms of that important tax revenue that Cedric referred to earlier, that's so important for just maintaining your community's infrastructure and core services. And so that Walmart has been critical in helping to pull back some of that sales tax revenue and allow other businesses to be more successful, because if they're going to shop for groceries, then they're more apt to stop at some other businesses along the way. One of the areas where we really found we were lacking was with Americans now spending, more than 50% of their income for food eaten outside the home, was that we were lacking in terms of restaurants per capita as compared to our sister city. And so after trying for years of just saying, hey, we're a great community and we have all this great property and growth and opportunities, and still seeing all of that restaurant development go to the capital city, we decided to get a little more creative and created what we call a restaurant rewards program. And it rebated back a 1% local sales tax for years, for the first 5 years of operation, so very performance based. The more successful the restaurant, the better the rebate. And at the same time, if they were not successful, it didn't put risk on our city. And then we also assisted in buying down the interest rate for those that needed financing for the expansion or startup of restaurants through a partnership with our state-owned Bank of North Dakota in combination with the lead lender. And so we've seen 9 new restaurants open since 2016 as a result of that program. Most of them are independent operators, unique concepts that help add to to Mandan being a destination for something unique that can set it apart in our area. And then a service area for 6 smaller communities that are within our county and a whole rural trade region to the southwest of us.
What do you find about the food quality and access where you are?
I'm a foodie and I like to cook, and I struggle sometimes with and they're probably not exotic fruits to you, but like mango and kiwi. By the time those trucks reach western Kansas, that fruit has been at the bottom of the crate. And so when I come to places like this, I like to eat those things that aren't necessarily the freshest back home. We do have a community garden that is free for anyone. They also give their excess vegetables to the Ministerial Alliance for the Food Pantry. My dad always, and we have a lot of farmers that do this, they plant all this corn and then they hide 4 or 5 rows of sweet corn in it and hope that the deer and the raccoons don't get it. But then folks can come in and pick it. We take it into the community garden for the food pantry and things. Our beef is very good. Our chicken is very good. Our turkey is very good. Our seafood, not so much, because again, by the time it reaches us, so that's why I like coming here, is I get delicious seafood. But an interesting thing about food, and when you live in a city, people go to the market a lot or the grocery store a lot. I have enough food in my house right now that I could feed all of you guys for 3 days. Like, we butcher beef and we fill 2 big deep freezers, and we'll fill my mom's freezer and my in-laws next door. I don't know why, but we just hoard food. We go for eggs and milk and bread.
In case it snows.
In case it snows. Twice a year. I'm teasing. But you know what else is weird about that? We harvest wheat all the time. We see these trucks go by with all this grain, and they're loading it up. But I have to pay the same amount for a loaf of bread that you do, even though the wheat is growing right outside my window. Or a box of cornflakes, even though the corn is being grown, right there. And I know that the wheat we grow gets shipped all over the world and then somehow comes back and is on our grocery store shelf. So.
That's a great story. Thank you. And Cedric, please weigh in.
I'm just like Roberto over there. Just because we have a lot of it doesn't mean we have access to it. In our particular area, that's one of the things that you look at in Forest City. Our grocery stores and Walmart is on one side of town, whereas on the other side of town, the access issue is from a transportation to get to that particular, the fresh vegetables. One thing, we went after different grants, and we were recently rewarded with a grant from the Center of Disease Control, Arkansas Drop grant, which is a 5-year, up to $25,000 a year grant, where it works towards connectors and access. And one of the things that we're working on now is access to our farmers market, improving our farmers market to where the farmers are able to have a better place to showcase their vegetables. Our community has better access of getting to those fresh vegetables. And when you talk about obesity rates, when you talk about health issues, when you really drill down and peel back the layers, a lot of times it deals to access to those things to where it will help prevent some of those health issues. And also with this particular grant, we're looking at sidewalks and different things such as that, recreational trails, to where we can help with some of the different health issues and access issues that we have in our community, to have better access to fresh vegetables and have better access to improving our quality of life in our area.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you all, what keeps you up at night? Erica, feel free to take this one if you'd like to.
Yeah. We were talking at dinner last night, and one of the questions that you had sent us in the email was what keeps you up at night. So much of our resources are dependent on the census numbers, and the upcoming census keeps me up at night. It's going to affect health care in my area. It's going to affect school funding, state government. We call it the nasty C word. It's consolidation. You know, those are difficult discussions to have. I mean, when experts see a downward trend, they have to decide to spend money based on the census numbers. I'm on a task force for the Perkins money that's distributed, and we're really scared that because our population is declining at the rate it is, that will really affect the Perkins funding, and that's for continuing technical education. It affects the high schools, the colleges, and that's what keeps me up at night. And the outmigration of youth and the transfer of wealth. But I'm just nervous. I'm cautiously optimistic about the census, but a lot of our future depends on those numbers.
How about Cedric? What keeps you up at night?
I mean, the census is a big thing, but being a mayor, one of the things I was told to be an effective mayor, you got to catch the bad guys, you got to put out the fires, and you got to make sure the trash is picked up. And so those are the things that, the basics that you have to make sure that's done, but also the growth and vision of your community, the aging infrastructure, the need to bring new jobs into your community, and what needs to be done, and making sure that your vision is communicated to where you make sure everybody's on the same page and you're utilizing your resources to have sustainable progress. That's, it's exciting to have that opportunity to lead a community, lead a city, but also the things that need to be in place, need to get done to where that community can turn the tide of some of the population loss, turn the tide of some of the communication issues, to where you can put those things in place. It's nervous a lot of times at night when you're thinking about what needs to be done and the daunting task that's ahead of you. It's exciting about the opportunities, but also you worry about making sure that strategic planning and everything's in place and everybody's on board pushing in the right direction for that community to have success.
And Ellen, what makes you most worried?
Well, I know that our mayor would fully agree with Cedric in terms of meeting those basic service needs, and we would add snow removal to the trash collection and catching the bad guys and putting out the fires. But for what I do personally, I work so very closely with existing businesses on retention and expansion, and then also the startup of new businesses. We just finished our 7th annual Business Startup 101 workshop, and we have an experiment. We offered a business pitch challenge last year and have seen 6 businesses open from 11 entrants. And so we have our 2nd annual competition coming up. But so through all of this, these businesses become, kind of like my own children. And so I worry, every day, every night, every week that it could be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And we know that not all small businesses succeed, but I take those very personally. And so we're looking for ways to strengthen the alliance and the collaboration between those small business owners to see what can we do as a community to increase awareness of the products and services that we have available, not just for existing residents, but again, because we need to attract workforce, and just ways that we can help everyone succeed.
Very, very similar. Obviously, the census is a big concern to get that accurate count. With Fulton County and Salem, particular, rely heavily upon the tax returns, tax-based money. So, sales tax return for the state sales tax is divided up amongst each municipalities within the state. Salem sales tax base is roughly an estimated probably $25,000 per month. So, like Mayor Cedric said, police, fire, infrastructure, all comes out of that money on top of paying payroll and paying the bills. We've got to keep our lights on to operate. So with that said, infrastructure obviously is a concern. The previous administration, Mayor Gary Clayton was in office for 30, I believe actually it's 38 years. So he has laid a great base foundation. He was the admin that paved the roads, built the water and sewer treatment plants, piped in, for rural water. So lack of money to keep upgrading our water supply, obviously, and then to expand. I'd like to reach out to, there are certain neighborhoods within Salem that doesn't have, the city sanitation as far as the sewer system goes, just due to the fact of the geographical issues there, hills and that type of stuff. And all that costs money. There was a representative in here from USDA. We rely heavily upon USDA grants. Arkansas Rural Services is a good outsource for, partnership for added money. I want to be able to build upon the foundation that the previous mayor has left and progress Salem. We don't need to sit stagnant and just kind of sitting there. We need to get traction, progress. Everybody, I believe in our phone conference, Cedric, you said it best. If everybody takes care of what we can, great things will follow. So I want to create that curb appeal. Salem has, or Fulton County has, 0 interstate that travels through. It's typically a U.S. highway. But with that said, it's connected to the Delta, and then it goes up into northwest Arkansas. So there's commerce, there's traffic flowing through there. But you want that curb appeal to have that motorist or that tourist to stop in at your stores and get a tank of gas. That creates tax revenues. Buy a cheeseburger from Mom and Pop Cafe at the corner. So what keeps me up at night? A lot of stuff. Mainly, I want to progress Salem and leave it better than what I had found it at.
Thank you so much. And Roberto, how about you?
Oh, I sleep through the night. No, it's same issues. The census is a big issue, but we're very grateful with the USDA, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Commerce, because it's through them we have received a lot of funding, and we are able to increase our infrastructure, our housing development, or retails, or commercial, a lot of the industrial. The Department of Energy, through these grants we have been able to, or the transportation for those windmills has been able to set presence in Garden City and produce more jobs and produce more infrastructure. We actually have right now going a bypass. It's being refurbished and resurfaced. So there's a lot of construction. It's a nuisance. But again, we're very grateful that things are moving forward, and we have received the funds for doing those improvements. Just like both mayors have mentioned, it's important to satisfy everybody's needs, and that's one of the biggest challenges where you have limited resources, where you don't have the tax base that you would have typically in a metropolitan area. So it's a juggle on all these things, and it's important to take care of everything, even snow removal.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to wrap up, what makes you most hopeful for your community for the future?
Well, I'm very thankful for Dante and you and Jordan for doing this kind of research, because to us it really means a lot. Trying to understand that the community, we are very similar to everybody else. Yet we're all fighting for the same resources that are available through, again, we have all limited resources. But at the same time, I'm very grateful that, there's people who have interest, and I appreciate every one of you to show your interest in this. So it shows that we are, as a country, we are all wanting to progress together and being unified. I guess a lot of people here in Washington, D.C., they'll take a look at what's going on and say, well, these are also people who also have needs. It's a very different and a very difficult situation, because how do you distribute those things? Again, thanks to the Department of Commerce, USDA, CADA, all the organizations and agencies, because they see what their needs, and maybe we'll distribute that.
And Daniel, what gives you the most hope for your community's future?
There was a gentleman that was asked, he asked a question of students graduating and leaving. Since I've been mayor, I have seen a trend of them getting their degrees, professional degrees, doctors, attorneys, and that type of such of career path, that they're slowly trickling back home. They've tried the big city living, and they really didn't like it. They like coming back home. Now, with that said, they open up a law firm office, on the corner. They're going to have to wear many hats. They may be the county attorney and also a city, or a school attorney of some sort, So it's not necessarily going to be able just to, have all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. What makes me hopeful for Salem is the growth. I'd like to see, hope that this discussion, this meeting, this study will create new discussion to see where federal monies can be channeled towards, like Roberto mentioned, how they can allocate that towards, different communities.
What about you, Ellen? What gives you the most hope for the future?
Well, I think we feel like we've gotten a lot of the big things in place. We have strong regional health care on both ends of the spectrum, from birth to aging, and tools in place. So not long ago, we were below the threshold for USDA rural development programs, and we're able to take advantage of putting together a couple of revolving loan pools with intermediary relending funds. So we have $2 million in revolving loan pools there. We were also able to tap into the U.S. Department of Treasury's State Small Business Credit Initiative in 2011 and get a $9.7 million 38 municipality revolving loan pool set up. So we're giving those tools available to people who are willing to invest in our community, and then we're giving them reasons to invest. And so we're seeing that happen now. So I'm encouraged by the local residents that are stepping forward and investing in new businesses, as well as the existing businesses that are investing in expansions. So I mean, certainly there are boogeymen out there that could derail all of these things going, but right now I'm really most hopeful by the momentum that we have and riding that through.
I'm hopeful because I'm seeing people that haven't necessarily been active in the community come forward and say, what can I do to help, in whatever capacity it is. I'm seeing increased reinvestment in the community, see some local people buy some buildings, start businesses in there, for the sole intention of helping the community, not necessarily getting rich off their business, but knowing it's a need in the community. I've seen a swing in active elected officials focusing on rural Kansas, rural America. I see it from the federal level and in the state level. I think folks are realizing that a lot really goes on there, a lot more than they think. And, I can't believe the number of people in this room that want to know about rural America. That's really surprising and encouraging. So that gives me hope, too.
That's great. Cedric, what are you most hopeful about?
Yeah, absolutely. This here really gives me, it's exciting. It really is. And listening to the different opportunities and different obstacles that we have from this group here, it gives me hope that we're not in this boat, just by ourselves. We're in this together, and people are recognizing some of the different obstacles and challenges that we have. In my particular community, I'm very hopeful about the unification efforts, the partnerships that have really started, that's focusing on our educational system. That is really going to really work out in a great way for us in the future. Also, I'm very hopeful of our location where we are. We have the ability where we are to have the small town feel, but also we have from our location on the interstate to go after the big fish, the big manufacturing jobs. So we have the ability to do both of that, to make sure that we put the plans in place from a strategic standpoint, that we're doing things the right way, and that we have sustainable progress in the future of that. So those are things that really it gives me a lot of hope about what's happening, the great things that are happening in St. Francis County, in Forest City, Arkansas, and the things that we're putting together to tell people, to get our message out about the different things that we're going there. I'm very hopeful that we're located as an opportunity zone. So we're seeing some of those investments back into our area from the larger areas. And as we continue to take advantage of that, there's no telling how far we can go with our community.
Thank you all so much for your stories and your insights. I want to open it up to the audience for questions.
Test. Question for Ellen. You mentioned the North Dakota State Bank, and I think North Dakota is the only state with a state bank, and I wonder what advantage, if any, that has in terms of the rural development in the state.
Thank you for that question. I think it's a tremendous hidden secret for us. It comes from some of our maybe socialist roots, now certainly being a very Republican state, but the profits from the Bank of North Dakota are oftentimes reinvested in projects for the good of the state. For example, I've mentioned our challenges in having all these job openings and growth in our state and needing to fill these jobs. And so this past legislative session, our legislators appropriated $6 million in profits from the Bank of North Dakota to be used as a one-to-one match for private sector dollars for a scholarship program as well as a loan forgiveness program for students that have received 2 years of either associate degree or certificate training in high demand career areas. So that's just a creative example of how those profits can be utilized for the good of the state. But then in particular, they have some great entrepreneurial loan programs in this interest rate buy down program. They provide a 65% match to buy down the interest rate for new and expanding businesses, and then the local community has a match rate. So I shouldn't say it's always 65%. We have the highest match of 35% as one of the growing communities in the state, and then those that would be in the most rural of rural areas would have a lower match rate, and so it allows that lead lender or that independent community bank to say yes to a lot more projects because of programs like that.
And just as a reminder, if you could state your name and organization before you ask the question, that would be great.
Hi, Clifford Deaton with the Community Strategies Group at Aspen Institute. Let's talk specifics about the census. What are your communities doing to make sure that there's an accurate count, since that's a big concern of a lot of folks on the panel?
That is a very good question.
I'll
let you go first, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. It's and we're starting the groundwork. It's very important in rural communities with this census that we choose people to be part of the census community that are recognized in our community. One of the big things about this census, it's not, from what I've been told so far, it's not all the paper census that we were used to 10 years ago. But it's a census where people are going to have the iPads. They're going to expect about 65% of the people to be counted from computers, electronic standpoints. Well, that's a challenge in a lot of our rural communities because they're just now getting some of the broadband. They're just now getting computers from that standpoint. So we need recognized people that people build trust in. To say, hey, this is important, you need to be counted. So from a leadership standpoint, we're choosing people that are recognized in our community, whether that's the faith-based, your business leaders, explaining to that leadership how important this census is to your congregation, to the people you serve in your community, and getting that buy-in and using that to really get people to trust how now, I've really talked to my department heads to when it comes to counting this from the census, it's going to be all hands on deck. From our library to our water department to our public works, everybody is going to be talking about this is how in your county. When you go to pay your water bill, you're going to have access of how to complete the census from that standpoint there. So those are some of the things from rural community, we're able to use the term control what we can control to really help from that aspect to show the importance of this census, not only how important it is to our area, Ford City, how important it is to our county, but how important it is to our state, entire state of Arkansas.
Some of the data tied with the census is this low to moderate income. And our communities in Kansas, you're only eligible for some commerce grants, some CDBG grants, if your LMI percentage, low to moderate income percentage, is at a certain level. So if all of our people out in Gove County aren't counted in the census, then the income distribution in the county is off. The people who are going to complete and return the census, perhaps they're the ones that make a little more in your county, so your low to moderate income is shifted a little bit too high because these folks didn't return their census. And so on January 1st of 2020, one of the first things I have to do is to challenge the census numbers that are going to come out about the low to moderate income in Gove County, because it's already predicted to be not what I need to apply for those grants, and that's a lot of work. But every time I've done one, those people will respond, and I'll go knock on the doors. I use the local fire department, the law enforcement officers, again, because they're well-known and trusted members of the community, to help me get those LMI numbers. And I haven't had an unsuccessful challenge to the census on the LMI numbers, and I think that's because people don't fill them out, or they're not home, or they, you know. So hopefully the web-based census data capture will be more effective.
And I'm on a complete count committee for both our community as well as from a state perspective as one of our Economic Development Association leaders in our state. So I'm interested in hearing all of the ideas here today. But one of the opportunities in our community is we're becoming increasingly diverse. We have our local meat processing plant that's been in our community and family owned for 100 years has been recruiting from Puerto Rico and now more recently Guam. And so we're going to make sure that we work with them to have response forms or iPads, whatever we need, right there on site at the place of employment, and translators as needed, and then also working with the school system and our English as second language educators to make sure that we can help show how diverse our community has really become, because our census numbers, we know, don't reflect it.
Good morning.
Clifford, so in answer, Phoenix County is in a special situation because we got miscounted in 2010. So we're working directly with the U.S. Census Bureau. We received the data, our GIS, and our staff is working with. We identify some areas that were actually, we were miscounted, although we challenged them and all that. It didn't matter. So that was one of the biggest things. The next big thing is that since we are a large minority population, the minority, they don't have a lot of understanding about this census, and a lot of them are even afraid of being counted in it. So we're working with them and identifying, this is a good thing. Like it was mentioned by Erica, all numbers do matter when it comes to doing all these. So there's a lot of misunderstanding in both of these areas, both on the way that the Census Bureau did their distribution. We have fixed those, and also with the population that we have, that they need to understand that it's a good thing.
Good morning. My name is Laura McDaniel, and I'm from the National League of Cities. And first, I want to say thank you to the panel for traveling in today. My question for you is about small businesses. You all touched on it a little bit in Ellen's remarks, addressed this the most directly, but I was wondering if you could talk about some of the things that you're doing to support your small businesses and entrepreneurs and to develop them, and then what sorts of supports you would need to do that better. Because you hear in some communities, like anecdotally, or you read about it, where stores like Dollar General will come in and they will really threaten like mom and pop shops and things like that. So what is it that you all are doing, and what kind of help would you need to do it better?
The biggest thing that we did is quit looking at what we could attract from the outside and focus on what was already within our community, and then fostering that entrepreneurship. And so SBA programs are very helpful. For example, the SBA match that makes our small business development centers available. I think we have about 8 across the state, and we're constantly in there encouraging our state legislators and then our North Dakota Department of Commerce to provide that dollar for dollar match needed to harness all of those federal dollars and in combination with local investment. We've got Million Cups program going now with the Kauffman Foundation in Bismarck, which we take advantage of in our area. And then one of our other committees that we have that came out of our strategic plan is called our Economic Opportunity and Prosperity Committee. And they've been very helpful, a lot of lenders, accountants, real estate agents in identifying where they think there are information gaps in our community and where we have outreach and training opportunities. So we've had a Google Get Your Business Online workshop or social media marketing for small businesses, where it's just small businesses sharing their best practices with one another, but we put together the sponsorship and the forum to bring 100 small business owners together at a time to share ideas. We do an annual downtown tour of buildings and spaces that are available for sale and rent and talk about what could be, and then showcase a lot of the recent progress and projects that are in the pipeline that people might not be aware of. So I think it's just constant communication and outreach, but we need to do even more on the alliance of businesses working together.
Daniel's, to answer your question, Garden City, what we're doing, we have the Department of Commerce, and we also have a group called Downtown Vision, who works with the small retailers and the mom-and-pop shops and all that. And we have also identified that these large retail big boxes, they, although, a lot of that goes there, but these small shops are still progressing. We have an example with Carniceria in Garden City that it's always full. So we don't have that big of a problem. So I think that there may be some misconception of, oh my God, there's this big retail store coming in and it's going to take away our businesses. Well, competition is good. We got to understand that. So it's a good thing. On the other thing, also, we have implemented different zoning regulations. Like, for example, in Garden City, we did away with the parking requirements to allow for some of these shops to go in. We also allow mobile vendors in some areas where they are the starters for restaurants and they're trying to get their feet up. We work with itinerant licenses and reduce their costs for that, so that these new restaurants or wanting to become a restaurant, they can settle in and we can help them find a spot once they are back on their feet or they're up and going.
Within Salem, like you mentioned, retain what we have. That will focus on the potential growth. Someone will see that the community leaders within my area will take care of what's already there in hopes to promote and grow the businesses within the community. That create bridges. That's another key element that will hopefully potentially shed some light on the gaps if there is, misdirection or miscommunication between business owners to community leaders. That's going to hopefully give us an avenue to pursue to hopefully grow more retail stores within our communities.
I'll tag one more thing onto that. It's important from a leadership standpoint from the city that we look local for a lot of our city needs from our small businesses there. So we're showing from a leadership standpoint, we're really supporting our local businesses and their needs from a city standpoint. And that way they see that importance also.
Hi, I'm Ben Gadjalori from the Center for American Progress. I just want to thank you guys for coming, and I loved hearing your stories. You talk a lot about the grants and resources that you get. Can you speak to some of the struggles you have with that, and then what could the federal government do better in help facilitating what you do?
Well, believe it or not, about 2 years ago, we received a grant for a ball field, a Legion-sized ball field, and some of the community was very prideful. They are like, we don't need a grant for a ball field. We'll all come and we'll plow that and sow those seeds of grass and build those fences. But sometimes when you call in those favors, those folks are busy, or they're in harvest, or their kids have games. So some of the challenges are, if you're eligible for those grants, the community perception is, well, our friends in Hazel think that we're broke. Well, a lot of us are broke. A lot of us don't have a big tax revenue base. So if we can utilize the tax dollars that we're paying in and get them back in the form of grants through Commerce or USDA or the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, then we really need to do that. When we go lobby in Topeka or whatever your capital city is, your legislators will tell you, if I give you $1, Erica, you show me how you're going to turn it into 5. So some of our challenges are telling our story. Why am I more worthy of this grant than my sister city 60 miles down the road? Sometimes people don't like to talk about your low to moderate income or your low income housing. And, we have to do that to get better. I don't have any struggles. I feel like folks are making these programs available to us. We have good communication with our legislators, our Department of Commerce, Department of Transportation, KDHE. They reach out to us and say, we want to help. It's just rolling your sleeves up and getting the work done, because it's a lot of work, as it should be. It shouldn't be easy.
And I'll speak to that. My challenge is not the grants, but having the person to spend the time, the resources, to pay that person to spend the time to have access to those particular grants. One of my first things as being elected mayor was to hire a person, and she has the slash of grant writer / human resources. Well, with that salary, $35,000, kind of had to pull teeth to get that approved. But that person has already, within 9 months here, been represented over $500,000 worth of grants for our particular area, and just scratched the surface of that. So, but you had to pull resources from one area to really invest in that particular grant writer. Now, there's so much else out there, from brownfield grants to different things such as that. But as Erica said, it takes time and it takes resources to really go out and pursue those particular things. So from my perspective, the grants are out there, but actually finding the dedicated time and the dedicated resources to compensate someone to do that is one of the big challenges that I'm facing.
I think that's all the time we have for questions right now. We can come back, and take them at the end, possibly. But thank you all. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.